What's going on? It is Wednesday. That means we have game tomorrow. We have Buccaneers and Cowboys kicking things off on Thursday night. We're gonna go over the showdown slate. So I got the board here. We're gonna go over the plays, what we think of the game, what's been going on in the betting market with this game, and just some props I think will lead us in the right direction of what we want to do. So I think the first thing we want to look at, before we even look at the players, and that's what I have up, we're gonna look at the line. Quick refresh, make sure that we're still on the right spot. But this line has moved now all the way up to 8.5. I think it started the week around 7.5. Went to 8 yesterday, now we're up to 8.5. Which is weird because everybody I hear talked about is saying they would like the Cowboys side at 8. So it's moved to 8.5, which a lot of the money's coming on Buccaneers. They deserve it, though. They're the Super Bowl champions. They're going to be at home. It's usually historically a good spot for the Super Bowl champion to kind of crush this game. So, makes sense, but I would have a hard time betting against a fully healthy Dak. I'm worried about the offensive line missing a couple starters. I'm worried about the Dallas defense, of course. They didn't get much better, especially in the secondary. So that's all an issue. But we have a high total. But the spread's getting wider, which is worrying me quite a bit. I was initially thinking this game's going to be a shootout. I'm still leaning that direction, but it's turning into like it could be a Tampa Bay blowout, which would really change things. I think you'd still want to get part of the Dallas passing game if it's a blowout, but that kind of knocks down the Tampa Bay passing game a little bit, and you kind of want to get more Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette in there. So we have that. I have some props open as well. Just I just like to look at them. The only thing I didn't like about the props is I don't have a Gio Bernard prop on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think Gio Bernard's kind of going to be like the guy who breaks this slate. And I'll show why in a second here when we get to the picks. But no props for him here. I'm sure you can find on other sites. This is the reception props. You can see there's like pretty much a split between Amari and CD right now on who's going to get more receptions. But I think when it comes to ownership projections, we're seeing a big shift towards Amari or CD being more owned than CD, and they're roughly the same price. So let's just get into the lineups first of all. I think that's going to be important. So obviously, it's important. That's what we're building. So captain spot 1.5 times fantasy points, but also 1.5 times his salary. The thing is, normally on DK, you don't want to play the quarterback. It's usually not the winning strategy. You usually want to play a pass catcher instead. So he's going to rack up PPR points. I think this is one of those exception weeks. We have two very elite quarterbacks, in my opinion, and elite passing offenses that have a ton of targets. So, like, Dak Prescott or Tom Brady could easily throw for 4 touchdowns apiece to 4 different players. That's well on the table. The other thing I think we notice is that the salaries are actually pretty low this week. It's pretty soft pricing, especially at the quarterback position. When you get elite quarterbacks at a soft pricing, it becomes a lot more lucrative to put him in that captain spot. Usually it's tough to fill out a lineup with a quarterback in the captain spot, but the rest of the pricing is pretty soft. So Tom Brady and Prescott are both going to be in there. They're both very highly owned, but I don't think I can fade that. I'm going to be giving a good chunk of both of them as captains, and then filling out the rest with the skill position players that matter. So there's going to be some good value plays on this board as well at the flex. I think we really need to focus on avoiding putting those guys in captain as much as we can. This slate with the pricing as soft as it is going to come down to scoring the most amount of points, which means you need the player who scores the most amount of points in your captain spot. So I mentioned earlier, I love Gio Bernard this game. Pass catching back, sounds like he's going to be good to go. He's only 3K at the captain spot. And I know like optimizers and stuff are going to kind of like putting him there a little bit. But I don't know if he's even captain viable, to be quite honest, because there's like less than 1% chance that he's scores the most points on this slate. For Gio Bernard to score the most points on this slate, he would probably have to get 2 touchdowns. I don't think that's on the table for him, especially if this game script is that Tampa Bay gets in the lead quick and they run the ball because Gio's the pass catching back. Ronald Jones and Fournette will do the running. So We'll touch on that when we get to the flex, but I'm just going to go through this list right now, and I think there's only like a handful of guys that I'd even consider putting in the captain spot, and I'll just run through them quick. So both the quarterbacks, as I said, are in. Zeke's in, even though I'll be low on Zeke. I have him projected around like 7 to 10% in the captain spot. I'll probably be around 5 or lower. I think he gets game scripted out of this. Tony Pollard should see some run in the pass catching then. So this is a tough spot for Zeke, and he's super high priced. Like this is very high priced for Zeke in my opinion. He shouldn't be this close to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is going to score more points than Zeke Elliott by probably 2 out of 3 games, 66% of the time. Dak's going to score more than Zeke. So I don't think their salary should be this close. Mike Evans will definitely be a captain viable spot. Cowboys secondary is awful. Evans is probably the number one guy. Godwin had a little bit of an injury in practice. I don't think he's going to play. It's not an issue. But I think Evans is the guy that can really roast this defense. And he's definitely the red zone target over Godwin. So I'll be looking for Mike Evans in the captain spot quite a bit. I'm not a backup quarterback guy, so I'm not doing that, especially not in captain. Godwin's available captain. I'm just going to go through this quick. Godwin, Cooper, Lamb are all captain viable. Fournette's not. Gallup, if you want to do a little bit of sprinkle of it, but probably not for me. Antonio Brown is this is too cheap. The lineups you get when you put Antonio Brown in captain spot is nice. He's just as likely to score 2 touchdowns as Mike Evans or Chris Godwin is. He's on the field just as much, basically, so no problem there. And maybe a little Rojo, and that's about it. I'm not doing Gronk. There's not enough PPR upside with Gronk. He's going to get, if he gets 3 catches, 2 or more touchdowns for 10 yards, and you probably just want Brady in your captain spot then. And no one else even down here is pretty viable. Scotty Miller's going to see the field and be a flex play. Gio Bernard's going to be a super flex play, but for the reason I mentioned earlier, he's just not captain viable. The lineups are too easy to build with this soft. You don't want a guy who's not going to be the highest scorer on the slate in your captain spot. So that's that. Let's take out the flex plays, which my projection's over here a little bit. I have Tom Brady and Dak Prescott being far and away the most highest projected ownership. Makes sense. I was reading some articles about best ball slates from last year, and the winning lineup had at least one quarterback in it, 96% of the time. It was 1 week didn't have a quarterback in it. So in a game that's projected for 50 points, you probably want both. Quick look at the props too on the quarterbacks. Both are projected for around 300 yards, give or take. Passing, both projected for about 2 touchdowns. I know it says 1.5 and 2.5, but the odds would say around 2 for both. What's interesting though is they're both projected for about 26 completions and both projected for about 40 pass attempts. So that is interesting in my book. I think if the game script plays the way it's written, the way Vegas has it written, Dak's going to throw a lot more than Brady. But if this game stays close, you're gonna see this 40, 45 pass attempts, I think, on each side. So both quarterbacks are in. Dak's a little cheaper. Brady's team's projected to score more points though. Has a higher implied team total. So we'll see where we go with that. I think Brady's safer. I think Brady's definitely safer. Dak has a higher upside in my opinion, but Brady's safer. Safer at his price. Playing against a pretty awful defense, while Dak has a pretty bad matchup against a very good Tampa Bay defense. That's going to go through. I think where this slate really gets interesting is going to come down to Cooper versus Lamb. They're $200 apart, so it's kind of it's a pick 'em. But if you think about it, people have been doing best ball and drafts for the past month have consistently seen CeeDee Lamb go at the end of the second, early third round in those drafts, and Amari Cooper usually floats to the end of the third. Yeah. And that shows in the initial projections. I see CD around 40% ownership projection and Amari Cooper around 30%. So it's a 10% ownership difference on the guy who's lower priced. But in all realistic outcomes, CD and Amari have the same exact ceiling. Like, last year CD was clearly the number 2 on the team, and then defenses treat him clearly like the number 2. This year they may treat him like the number 1. They put their best coverage corner on CD this year instead of Amari. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. So I think they have the exact same ceilings. And if you're telling me one of them is going to be like 10% less owned, I'm more interested in Amari. I think that just makes sense. I think from a game theory perspective, that makes a ton of sense. Same kind of goes for Godwin and Evans. Evans is projected to be quite a bit lower. He is quite a bit more expensive at like 600 more, and that 600 does make a big difference. But Evans has, I would say, higher upside, higher touchdown equity for Evans, especially if Godwin's dealing with an injury at all. And he was a full participant today, so I don't think it was very serious. But it'll be interesting to see if there's any issues before kickoff. Okay. Elliott is not projecting very well for me, so I'm like probably gonna be off. I'd rather be on the passing game of both teams than Elliott. It's just too likely Elliott gets game scripted out of this game. It's a nice contrarian play though. I think if you go Elliott in the captain spot, you might have something there. But like the games where Elliott smashes is not really within this game script of either shootout or Buccaneers are ahead. Dallas needs to pass to get out of it. All right. Scroll down a little bit here. Leonard Fournette, at 7K, I'm not interested. I'd rather play Gallup at 6,200. Leonard Fournette in this 3-way split with Rojo and Gio is just really not interesting. I think for me, it'd be more interesting to go with Rojo at 2,000 cheaper. It's a huge savings. I think Rojo is probably the main back there. If I quickly look at my projections, I think I have Rojo projected for more straight up points than Leonard Fournette. So that's where I'm gonna be going. Granted, he's gonna be more. He's not even like I haven't projected for like the same ownership. I think, especially in this first week, you're gonna see a lot of people who don't dive in the teams very far. They're gonna pick Leonard Fournette more often than they should. You're gonna see some weird ownerships on guys that shouldn't be getting picked. Leonard Fournette's one of those guys, I think. I should touch on defenses and kickers quick, I guess. At a 52 point total, I'm really looking to get the skill positions right instead of kickers or defense. I'll probably be max 1 total kickers and defenses on any given team. I think that's the rule I'm using in my optimizer. But Cowboys defense is almost completely off the table. I don't see a game where the Cowboys defense comes up big. Maybe they get a random punt return and a random interception return, but I don't think so. The game script doesn't look like that's going to happen. Like, the Cowboys don't win this game by a blowout ever, really. So, they're off the table for me. Zerline or Suckup are fine. If you're going to want to jam in a kicker, they're going to show up once in a while. You just got to play them sometimes. Bucs defense is quite expensive at 4,800 actually. I think they'll need to get at least a touchdown to pay off. At least a touchdown to pay off that price. There's too many other good options. And even if the Cowboys score like 24 and this game ends up like 38-24, like Tampa Bay blows them out, and it's still I don't see Dallas scoring like less than 20 points, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we're not gonna be relying on the Buccaneers defense to get us points through not allowing points. It would have to be through sacks, interceptions, fumble recoveries, and touchdowns, and I'm not super keen on rolling that. I'll have a few shares of Bucs defense, but it'll be tough. Let's see what else we want to talk about here. Antonio Brown's cheap. He's 5,600, and he's just as likely to score as Evans and Godwin, in my opinion. So that's too cheap. He'll be in a ton of lineups for me. Tight ends. Gronk's always in play for that like random 2-touchdown game. Huge red zone target for Brady, we know that. Blake Jarwin versus Dalton Schultz is just like I don't know what they're going to do at tight end. Blake Jarwin was the starter last year, but got hurt for the season. Missed almost the entire season. And the Dalton played pretty well, but something they're both healthy, both going to play. Seems like a toss-up. Unlikely they're on the field together at the same time, though, which is like, I mean, you used to have to me, I just put on like 50% snap share, and that's not great. These guys are cheap. But when we start talking about guys that are 5,200 and 4,600, I need a little bit more assurance that they're going to score points than on the field 50% of the time. I'd much rather go down and pay for Gio Bernard. At 2K, as a pass catching back in a PPR league, Gio Bernard is the best value on the play. Best value on the slate. I was trying to think if I'd go any lower than him here, and the only guys I would go lower for than Gio Bernard would be Cedric Wilson and Scotty Miller, the fourth receivers in these offenses. I don't think I'd be getting to a guy like Tyler Johnson. Just doesn't see the field enough. So this is where like the field ends for me. Cameron Brate seems to be not a factor in Tampa Bay anymore. It seems like O.J. Howard gets more play than Cameron Brate. But Brate's out. I'd play a little bit of Howard for some pass catching upside, but I think Tampa Bay's plan this year at tight end is to play O.J. Howard down the field basically as a more of a vertical threat, and then bring Gronk in at the red zone to be a big ball catcher that he is. So all right, I don't think there's much more to go over here, but I'm excited for this game to start. We had a huge total at 51.5. The spread's getting wider, which is making me a little bit nervous, but I'm going to stick with my convictions and say this is a shootout game. Both teams score over 20 points. We're going to see at least 3 touchdowns from each team. I think that's my prediction. We see at least 3 touchdowns from each team. I don't think that's super bold, but if that happens, I think we're looking for the passing side of each game. The heavy run defense is super good. Zeke's going to have a bad first start. It's almost certainly, unless they start using him in the passing game a ton, which they could. They certainly could, but they haven't in the past. At least not to a huge role. A little bit. At least not to a huge role. So, game theory wise, I think we just rely on both passing games and get some value plays. It's not a defense or kicker week. It's a skill players and quarterback week, which is interesting for the first game, but you do like to see it. So I'll wrap it up there. Hit subscribe, like the content. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this game's going to happen. I'm going to what Vegas says and say this is a high scoring game, but I'm a little more bullish on Dallas being better than an 8.5 point underdog in this game. So thanks for watching. See you next time.